March 15th, 2008, 9:47 p.m. Olivia Bennett locked the front door of Harmony Yoga Studio after her last evening class, the candlelit meditation session she'd taught every Saturday for 3 years. Her students had left, the incense had burned down, and the studio was peaceful and quiet. She texted her roommate, "Just closing up, home in 20. Those were her last words. When Olivia didn't come home by midnight, her roommate called her phone. It rang from inside the studio. The next morning, police found the studio exactly as Olivia had left it. Lights on, her bag in the office, her car in the parking lot, keys still in the front door lock. But Olivia was gone. It would take 16 years and a routine renovation to reveal that she never actually left the building, and that the studio owner, the spiritual guru everyone trusted, had been walking over her grave every single day. September 12th, 2024, 2:15 p.m. In the basement of Harmony Yoga Studio in Boulder, Colorado, contractor Mike Patterson was working up a sweat. The 45-year-old Patterson had 20 years of construction experience and had taken this job as a routine renovation. Studio owner Derek Morrison wanted to expand the basement and create a new meditation room. Patterson had been demolishing walls, removing old pipes, and preparing the area for 3 days. That afternoon, Patterson was swinging his sledgehammer at the south wall. The wall looked solid, a mixture of brick and concrete, probably from the building's original structure. But on the third swing, the sledgehammer went unexpectedly deep. The wall broke through, and there was empty space behind it. Patterson stopped, frowning. This wall wasn't on his plans. He grabbed his flashlight and looked through the hole. Behind it was a small room, about 6 feet wide, 8 feet long. The room was completely dark and smelled of dust. Patterson enlarged the hole, removing bricks one by one. Then he shined his flashlight inside again, and what he saw froze his blood. A skeleton lay on the concrete floor. It still had fabric remnants on it, purple and black, looking like yoga clothes. Beside the skeleton was a small gold necklace and remnants of long dark hair spread around the skull. Patterson stumbled backward, his breath catching. He pulled out his cell phone and called 911. I found a body, a skeleton, in the basement of Harmony Yoga Studio, Pearl Street, Boulder. Come immediately. The operator tried to calm him and told him not to touch anything, to wait there. Patterson went upstairs, stepped outside the studio, and breathed in the fresh air. His hands were trembling. Within 30 minutes, the studio was cordoned off with yellow police tape. Detective Rachel Torres from the Boulder Police Department was the first senior detective to arrive at the scene. Torres was 41 years old, had 17 years of police experience, and had solved many difficult cases in Boulder. But this case would be different. Torres descended to the basement and examined the hidden room. Forensic teams had already started working, photographs being taken, evidence being collected. Torres knelt beside the skeleton and looked carefully. "Female," said the forensic technician, "probably mid to late 20s. Been here at least 10 to 15 years. There's trauma to the skull, blunt force impact to the back." Torres nodded and looked around. The room was small and apparently had been planned as some kind of storage or boiler room, but there were no pipes, no equipment, just concrete walls and this skeleton. "When was this room sealed off?" Torres asked. Patterson called from above. "This room isn't on my plans. I checked the building's original blueprints. This wall shouldn't be there. Someone added it later." Torres thought someone had deliberately sealed this room and left a body inside. This was a planned murder. By evening, the skeleton was carefully extracted and sent to the forensic laboratory. Torres began researching the yoga studio's history. Harmony Yoga Studio had opened in 2003. The owner was Derek Morrison, one of Boulder's well-known wellness gurus. The studio was in an old warehouse building on Pearl Street, and Morrison had transformed it into a peaceful yoga center. Torres requested the studio's employee records. She checked whether there was a missing case in 2008, and she found it. Olivia Bennett, 27 years old, yoga instructor, disappeared March 15th, 2008. She opened the file. Olivia Bennett had worked at Harmony Yoga Studio for 3 years. On the night of March 15th, 2008, she'd closed the studio after her last class. She hadn't come home by midnight. Her roommate had called police. The next morning, the studio keys were found in the door, her bag in the office, her car in the parking lot. But Olivia was gone. An investigation had started, but no trace was found. Olivia had seemingly evaporated. The family had hired private detectives, offered rewards, but no results. The case had gone cold. And now, 16 years later, Torres had probably found Olivia. DNA comparison was done. Olivia's family still lived near Boulder. Mother Catherine Bennett provided a reference sample for her daughter's DNA. A week later, the results came. Perfect match. The skeleton in the basement was Olivia Bennett. Torres carefully examined the 2008 file. Detective Frank Miller had conducted the investigation. At the time, Miller was now retired, but Torres found and interviewed him. The Olivia Bennett case, said Miller, 67 years old, his hair completely white. Never forgot it. Beautiful girl, kind, everyone loved her. And one night she vanished. Made no sense. Did you question the studio owner? Torres asked Derek Morrison. Yes, he was one of the first people we talked to. Very cooperative, devastated. Said he saw Olivia like a sister, provided security camera footage, explained everything. His alibi was solid. He was home that night, his wife confirmed. Torres frowned. Did you check the basement? Miller thought. The basement? I think we looked. But everything seemed normal. Nothing suspicious. Torres began researching when the hidden room was constructed. She checked city records. No construction permits had been taken for the studio in 2008. But since the building was old, unauthorized changes could have been made. The important question was, who built that wall and when? Torres decided to interview Morrison. Derek Morrison was now 58 years old and still running the studio. Torres made an appointment and went to the studio the next day. Morrison greeted her with a smile. He was a tall, slender man with gray hair. He had a calm voice and peaceful demeanor, a typical yoga guru. Detective Torres, welcome, said Morrison. This terrible discovery has shocked us all. Olivia, we loved her so much. When she disappeared 16 years ago, our hearts broke. And now to learn she was here all along, I can't imagine. Torres watched Morrison carefully. Mr. Morrison, when did you seal off that section of the basement? Morrison frowned. Seal off? What do you mean? The hidden room. That wall isn't in the original plans. Someone built it later. Morrison looked surprised. Detective, I never used that basement. I converted it to storage in 2004 and never went in again. If a wall was built, I didn't do it. Torres took notes. Who else worked at the studio in 2008? Morrison thought. Olivia, me, and a few part-time instructors. But when Olivia disappeared, only the two of us were full-time. Where were you that night? At home with my wife. Police asked back then, too, my wife confirmed. Torres nodded. Alibi. But wives protected their husbands. Torres began researching Morrison's background. Derek Morrison was born in Colorado in 1966. He'd studied philosophy in college, then went to India to learn yoga and meditation. He'd returned to Boulder in 1995 and started teaching wellness. He'd opened Harmony Yoga in 2003. He'd married in 2001. Karen Morrison. They had 2 children, apparently a happy marriage. But Torres dug deeper. She interviewed Morrison's former employees. One of them, Lisa Chen, who'd worked at the studio in 2007, said something interesting. Derek always showed special interest in Olivia, Lisa said. He'd introduce her as the best instructor, give her extra responsibilities. At first, it seemed like a professional relationship, but sometimes his looks were strange, intense. I once asked Olivia if she felt uncomfortable. She said, "A bit weird, but harmless." Torres was starting to see a pattern. Another former employee, Mark Hoffman, told a different story. Derek once asked me to help in the basement. Must have been early 2008, maybe February. We moved some materials, but part of the basement was closed off. There was a brick wall. I asked what it was for. He said, "Old boiler room, sealed it for safety." Torres's heart raced February 2008. Olivia disappeared in March 2008. Could Morrison have prepared the room in advance? But she needed concrete evidence, DNA evidence. The forensic laboratory had found trace evidence on Olivia's bones: fabric fibers, purple and black, yoga clothes, a gold necklace, a small symbol, and critically, foreign DNA around the wound on the skull. The killer had left his own DNA when striking Olivia. Torres sent the DNA profile to the Colorado Criminal Database. No match. Morrison had no criminal record, but genetic genealogy was an option. Torres began working with specialist Dr. Michael Park. Park uploaded the DNA profile to public databases. 4 weeks later, a result came: second cousin match. Park began building the family tree. It took 6 weeks, and in November 2024, a name emerged. Derek Allen Morrison Torres took a deep breath when she read the result. The studio owner, Olivia's boss, the man who'd organized meditations in her memory for 16 years. But conclusive evidence was needed for court. Torres made a plan to get a DNA sample from Morrison. November 22, 2024. Torres invited Morrison to the station for routine follow-up. Morrison came with his usual calm demeanor. "Mr. Morrison, as a routine procedure, could we ask you to provide a DNA sample to complete the investigation?" Morrison paused for a moment. Torres noticed this pause. Then Morrison smiled. "Of course, Detective. Happy to help." The DNA sample was taken. 3 days later, the result came. Perfect match. The DNA found around the wound on Olivia's skull belonged to Derek Morrison. November 25th, 2024, 6 a.m. Torres arrived at Morrison's house with a SWAT team. It was in a beautiful Boulder neighborhood, a 2-story, well-maintained house. They knocked on the door. Karen Morrison answered, surprised. "Yes? Is your husband Derek Morrison home?" "Yes, upstairs. What's happening?" Derek Morrison came down the stairs in his pajamas. When he saw Torres, his face fell. "Derek Morrison," said Torres, "you're under arrest in connection with the murder of Olivia Bennett." Karen screamed. Children called from upstairs. But Derek was silent. He looked at Torres for a long moment. Then he bowed his head. "Finally," he said quietly. 16 years. It's finally over." Karen was in shock. "Derek, what are you saying? This must be a mistake." Derek turned to his wife, his eyes wet. "It's not a mistake, Karen. I did it. I killed Olivia." Karen nearly fainted. Torres caught her and sat her in a chair. At the station, Morrison was read his rights. He requested an attorney, but after meeting with his attorney said he wanted to confess. "I've carried this burden for 16 years, he said. "Every day I entered that studio and knew she was there. I can't carry it anymore." The formal interrogation began. Torres turned on the recorder. "Tell us what happened, Mr. Morrison." Morrison took a deep breath. "I was in love with Olivia for years. When I first hired her, I just thought she was a talented instructor. But over time, it became an obsession. I wanted to be with her, but she only saw me as her boss. What happened on March 15th, 2008? Morrison closed his eyes. That night, after the last class, I stayed at the studio. Normally I'd go home, but that night, something held me. Olivia finished her class. Students left. She was closing up. I hid in the office. Then I approached her, confessed my feelings, told her we could be together. But she rejected me gently but firmly. "Derek, you're married. I see you as my boss. This isn't possible," she said. Morrison's voice trembled. I got angry, lost control. I pushed her. She fell, hit her head on the desk. She got up, tried to run. I grabbed something, I think a candle holder, and struck from behind. She fell to the ground and never got up again. Torres was taking notes. "What did you do then?" I panicked, carried the body to the basement. There was a room there, old boiler room. I put the body there. Then I built the wall, spent that night and the next day, bought bricks and mortar, sealed the room. No one noticed. "How did you hide it for 16 years? Morrison laughed bitterly. "Did I hide it? Every day I walked over her. Every day I taught yoga classes, meditated, talked about peace. And every night, when I went home, I knew she was there. She entered my dreams. Guilt ate me, but I couldn't tell. You organized memorial services, gave comfort to her family." Morrison bowed his head. "I know. That was the worst part. Catherine, Olivia's mother, would come every month. I'd hug her, say, 'Olivia's spirit is still here.' And she really was there, just a corpse every time I was disgusted with myself. But I couldn't stop. If I confessed, I'd lose everything. My family, my career, my freedom." Torres asked the question, "Are you remorseful?" Morrison looked at her, eyes red. "Every day, every second. Olivia didn't deserve to die. I'm a monster, and I've lived with that monster for 16 years. The confession was complete. When the news spread, Boulder was shocked. The wellness community's beloved guru was a killer. For 16 years, people had sought peace in his studio. Over the victim's body, Catherine Bennett, Olivia's mother, gave a press statement. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice was steady. "For 16 years, I trusted Derek Morrison. When I lost my daughter, he supported me. Every month I went to his studio, attended his meditations, listened to his words. 'Olivia's spirit is here,' he'd say. And he was right. My daughter's corpse was there, beneath my feet. While I was mourning, he was feeding on my pain. This is unforgivable." Karen Morrison, Derek's wife, filed for divorce. "The man I was married to for 25 years was a stranger. I slept in the same bed as a killer. I don't know how to explain this to my children." The trial began in February of 2025. Derek Morrison was charged with first-degree murder and concealing a body. His attorney tried to negotiate for manslaughter instead of murder, arguing sudden rage, no premeditation. But the prosecutor rejected this. "This man hid the body for 16 years, said prosecutor Jennifer Adams. "He organized memorial services. He lied to the victim's family. This was planned, deliberate, and ruthless." The jury deliberated for 4 days. Verdict: guilty. First-degree murder. At the sentencing hearing, Catherine Bennett addressed the court. "My daughter was 27 years old. Her life was full of people who loved her. She wanted to help people, bring peace. Derek Morrison took her from me and lied to me every day for 16 years. When I hugged him, I wonder now what he was feeling inside. Was it remorse or triumph? This man is a monster incarnate, a smiling, calm, peaceful monster." The judge announced his decision. Life in prison, no possibility of parole. Morrison stood when the sentence was announced. "I deserve it," he said. "I deserve every day of it." He was 58 years old. He would die in prison. Harmony Yoga Studio was permanently closed. The building was sold and demolished. In its place, a small memorial park was built. In the center of the park is a bench inscribed, "In memory of Olivia Bennett, 1981 to 2008, seeker of peace and giver of peace." Detective Torres gave an interview after closing the case. "This case taught us a lot. Killers don't always hide in dark alleys. Sometimes they hide in yoga studios, church choirs, school classrooms. Derek Morrison hid in plain sight for 16 years. While preaching to people about peace and love, he was walking over his victim's body. Without technology, DNA analysis, genetic genealogy, we could never have solved this case. But now we have these tools, and killers have nowhere to hide anymore." Genetic genealogy specialist Dr. Michael Park also spoke. Derek Morrison's DNA wasn't in any criminal database, but his distant relative's DNA was in public databases. By following that connection, we found him. Science finally brought justice. Olivia's best friend, yoga instructor Sarah Kim, wrote on social media, "Olivia was my inspiration. She taught that yoga is not just physical, but spiritual. Every day, I remember her teachings. For 16 years, we didn't know what happened to her. Now we know, and that knowledge is both painful and provides a kind of closure. Olivia, your spirit is truly free now. Namaste." Boulder's wellness community established an annual scholarship fund in Olivia's memory. It provides training support for young yoga instructors. Every March, people gather from all over the community to remember Olivia, now a real memorial without lies. And in that small memorial park on Pearl Street, someone comes to sit every day. Maybe a student, maybe a family member, maybe just a stranger. They sit on the bench, look at the sky, and perhaps think about the peace Olivia really wanted to feel, not hidden behind a wall, but under open sky. If this story moved you, please subscribe and hit the like button. Every subscription helps us continue investigating cold cases that families are still waiting to solve. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and which unsolved case you'd like us to cover next.